Jesus said to his disciples, I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to your ancestors, you shall not kill, and whoever kills will be liable to judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. You have heard it said that you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Again, you have heard that it was said to your ancestors, do not take a false oath, but make good to the Lord all that you vow. But I say to you, do not swear at all. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Anything more is from the evil one. The gospel of the Lord. Well, I was getting lobbied in the sacristy that since the gospel was so long, the homily should be short. But they never took into account that I might take the short form of the gospel. And I wasn't lobbied in that direction. We'll see what happens. How many of you ever watch the TV shows about cooking and food? I don't. But I think I'm right in my memory. It was Chef Emeril who had his line, kick it up a notch, right? Am I right? And he used to do the bam too, didn't he? You know, bam, kick it up a notch, right? Well, if you put that in your mind, kick it up a notch, it's kind of what we need to take with us to the gospel today. Jesus is kicking it up a notch. He's really raising the bar. And if you think for a moment when these words were first spoken on his own lips to the people, it must have seemed insurmountable. Sometimes we read these Gospels and we just kind of take the words blithely. But the scribes, the Pharisees, they were the holy ones. They were the leaders. And Jesus is telling the people, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. He's definitely kicking it up a notch. And for many who heard these words when they were first spoken had to think this is an impossible task. How am I possibly going to be holier or more righteous than our own leaders? And Jesus goes on, and the short form has a few examples. The long form has more examples of how we can kick it up a notch, how that bar has been raised. And really, Jesus is trying to tell us that in the gospel, he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. We hear that in the longer form. But he's really calling us that the outward observance of law is not so important. What's really more important is the interior conversion, the interior change. That is what is most important. Well, I'd like us to take this for just a moment to reflect and maybe really prepare. March 1st is Ash Wednesday. It's coming soon. And Lent is that time that we're all called to kick it up a notch. We're all called to raise that bar, to raise that standard. And if you are like I am, sometime around 10 or 11 o'clock at night on Shrove Tuesday, I start thinking, okay, well, Lent's in an hour or two. What am I going to do this year? I think we can often procrastinate, maybe not even intentionally, and Lent, Ash Wednesday upon us, and we don't have a plan. We have a couple weeks before Lent. And this reading so beautifully placed maybe calls us to take these couple of weeks to really make a plan for Lent. What are we going to do to kick it up a notch? And Lent is not just about the 40 days. And, when Easter Sunday comes, we go back to our old way of living and say, thank God I got through that. That's not the purpose of Lent. Purpose of Lent is really to isolate some area of our life that we really want to change permanently, not just for 40 days. There's many different changes we can make. Yesterday I was on retreat with one of my teams of Our Lady groups, the married couples program. Had an overnight retreat Friday through last night. And we were at the Trappist Monastery in Pafard, a place that I long to go to, and after I'm there for a while I realize it's not where I belong, in silence. And came time, yeah, you can laugh, it's true. I was just joking at the pancake breakfast, about 2 weeks after death, my mouth will still be moving. Take that long to figure it out. And we went over for evening prayer with the monks. And there in the front row, unknown to any of us, was one of the families of our parish, mom and dad and 3 children from the school. And I thought how wonderful it was to see them just come out on their own, take a day to go and give the children an experience of what a monastery is like, join the monks in prayer. It's kicking it up a notch. And maybe during Lent, particularly those who have children at home, maybe plan something like that. Go for a day out to the Trappist Monastery. Go out for a day to the shrine up in Lewiston, to Fatima. Maybe look for some spiritual experience as a family together. Kicks it up a notch. For our married couples, maybe consider becoming part of a group like Teams of Our Lady. Meets once a month. Strengthens strong marriages. Become part of Marriage Matters here at St. Greg's. Strengthens strong marriages. Kicks it up a notch to make that commitment once a month to go to a meeting to share what's going on in your own marriage, as well as learn from other married couples. Kick it up a notch. Maybe we hear in the gospel Jesus talk about taking oaths. It was the last example. Maybe during Lent, maybe we need to take a look at the oaths we've taken. For those who are parents or godparents, as you took a promise that day you had a child baptized, maybe open up that promise and use those words as words of prayer. As parents and godparents make that promise to teach the children to live God's commandments as Christ Jesus taught, to teach them to love God and love neighbor, to really reflect on the meaning of those words and maybe kick it up a notch and not only reflect on how you're doing, but do it more richly. Similarly, for those who are married, maybe to take for those 40 days of Lent the vows of your marriage and use them daily in your prayer, and to really reflect where you are in those vows that you've taken, and certainly where you can grow deeper to love and honor each other as husband and wife, to accept children lovingly from God and raise them in the practice of the faith, and to love and support each other for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. To really see that those vows are preparing you for life eternal. And as husband and wife, you're called to prepare each other for life eternal. Direct each other in that path. Maybe that's the notch you need to kick it up a little bit during the season of Lent. Perhaps really make the commitment now to come to the parish retreat, those 3 afternoons or 3 evenings where we'll have, this year we're very blessed to have Father Joe Bain, very well known in Buffalo, to be our retreat director for those 3 days. Maybe make that commitment. Or perhaps if you've often scratched your head and said, I wish I could find more time to pray, as if we added a 25th hour to the day, it would be spent exclusively in prayer, maybe make that the Lenten discipline, to get to the Adoration Chapel for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. Kick it up a notch that way. Maybe the kicking it up a notch is simply saying no to something. I remember a commercial from Topps years ago. I have no idea what they were selling, but it was a great commercial. And it showed a mother setting the dining room table with nice tablecloth, the good china, crystal, and all the fineries. and in walks her husband and her son and her daughter, and they all asked simultaneously, "Who's coming to dinner tonight?" And her answer was a husband without a late meeting, a son without a soccer game, and a daughter without dance class. I don't know what they were selling, but I remember that point of the commercial. Maybe to kick it up a notch by saying no to some of the other very good things, but to just spend a little more time as a family and even do something a little nicer and as a family together. Or maybe if it's always gnawed at you, to either become involved with your time or to make some financial contribution in some significant way. Look to do that. I remember when I was vocation director and living at Blessed Sacrament in the town of Tonawanda, and perhaps I've told you this story. Monsignor Golumbek, the pastor, one of his homilies said, my grandmother always taught me, give with a warm hand and not a cold one. Give with a warm hand, not a cold one. You know what that means? It means if you want to give somebody something, don't wait till they read your will. That's what it means. Do it while you're still alive. And this gentleman at Mass came into the sacristy and he said, I really listened to that homily and it meant a lot to me. He said, I've been for some time wanting to do something for our school. He said, so I'm going to drop off a check for $250 during the week for the school. Use it as you need. And thankfully, we were all at the rectory when he came, because this gentleman came a few days later and handed Monsignor a check for $250,000 for the school. Tremendous gift, least expected. And the list can go on and on. I've given you some examples. The gospel is very clear today. Do something to kick it up a notch, do something to raise the bar, in changing the interior of your life so the exterior actions meet it, not just for 40 days during Lent, but a permanent change.